What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity once again, interviewing multitudes of builders across Web3. Before we hop in, I want to quickly highlight Genfinity is an independent research-driven media organization supported by several enterprise ecosystems, Hedera, XDC, Algorand, and beyond. Support from these partners helps us make long-form content like this possible. The conversation is strictly informational, not financial advice. But I've got to say, a little bit of a bucket list interview here today. I know we've had a couple of Solana ecosystem projects on in the past, but we're going to hear directly from Vibhu, who is head of product marketing at the Solana Foundation, and explore some of the major ideas shaping the next decade of digital economies, from internet capital markets to prediction markets and beyond. All right, that's enough of my initial rant. Vibhu, thank you so much for joining today. I kind of want to set the stage here. I mean, there's been so much going on in crypto over the past 12 to 18 months. You recently listed off a huge level of kind of layout of themes, which makes my job a lot easier to drive how these conversations are going to go, from internet capital markets, et cetera, et cetera. But how does all of this stuff that we're kind of watching in crypto, how does it all kind of tie together from the Solana standpoint? Because there's a lot of different things converging at once. And thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about everything that's happening in crypto. And, this year has been the year the dam broke in terms of, the regulatory side. The impact of that has been everything from, I think we just had our 6th ETF launch today for Solana with 21 shares, following Fidelity and Bitwise and so on. So we've had this like amazing story on the capital and institutional side. At the same time, the app layer is really exploding on Solana. We've been, really the home of people building products in crypto, spanning, like you said, from everything from prediction markets to fundraising platforms, ICO platforms. We even have like mining protocols built on Solana. There's so much going on, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of. And it's important for us to kind of like remind ourselves that there's more to it than just the price. There's people actually building things that others are using. So
100%. I think most of us that have been here for years, and I've brought this up before, where like if you would look back a handful of years, almost any one announcement that happens multiple times per day would have literally driven an entire market narrative for like 6 months.
yeah.
So it is very hard to keep up with. You bring up an interesting term, which is internet capital markets. And, I would love to try to, if we could keep it simple for people, what do you mean by that term? I mean, we're in a world that's gradually moving, for those that aren't aware and that don't see the polarizing stuff, that's going on with crypto from the mainstream media, because there's not a lot of like deep divey stuff. These financial systems are moving kind of into the internet of value to an extent. But what do you mean by internet capital markets? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is a phrase that kind of came out of the Solana ecosystem over the last year and a half. The original idea was that anyone with an internet connection and a phone should be able to invest in any company at any time. And we're finally at a point where this is going to be possible very soon. And certainly there's a lot of interesting kind of abstractions above that are happening, a lot of experimentation. It also means access to traditional capital markets for anyone. Traditional capital markets being, public equities, right? You can trade stocks on chain now. And that's really happening for the first time with things like XStocks and BactFi, Ondo, Superstate. There's a number of projects that are tokenizing stocks. That's kind of the traditional side of it. And then at the startup level, we have things like MetaDAO, we have things like Soar, we have ICM.run. You see a lot of startups who are tokenizing early and offering opportunities to investors and traders, pre-IPO. So that's, I think internet capital is kind of the whole gamut from startup to equities, bringing that on chain.
I think what's interesting is that, and I've brought this up, even outside of some of these Genfinity interviews, but from the personal standpoint on videos, where I don't think the majority of the world is even ready for the kind of like what's coming. And I think you bring up an interesting point where it's like it's access and participation, like really truly like democratizing the ability to participate in different things.
Yes.
One thing that I think is interesting is like I feel like we almost always have these back to the future moments in crypto where like there's a really cool innovative use case and then like it's almost too early for its time, and then like a handful so one of those is like I think tokenization of infractional kind of or investing in like fine art and luxury goods, vehicles. I think that I've said this before. I think like we obviously see all the big entities coming into crypto now for tokenized RWAs. I guarantee you 4 or 5 years from now, the coolest thing to do as a person, it would be to like own a part of a Pablo Picasso painting. Like all of the things that we know we're here in crypto for the past couple of years. Do you see similar things with like just how quickly that this space innovates, where sometimes things are a little bit too early and then they come back around again?
I think there's truth to that. There is literally tokenized Picasso on Solana with art trade. Yeah, I think that's crypto is the phrase that people use is a kind of speed running financial history. In a way, like I think tokenization is a good example of this, where it became like a very hot topic this year. It's like a buzzword. Like if you go talk to Wall Street firms, like they'll like tell you about stablecoins, they'll tell you about tokenization. I think what's putting Solana at the bleeding edge here, you kind of see the kind of gaps in people's thinking evolve very quickly. Just because something can be tokenized doesn't mean that it's something that people care about or want to own. And like at the end of the day, like I think there's two things that tokenization is doing. It's either bringing an in-demand asset to more people who wouldn't traditionally have access to it. Stocks is a great example of that. There are people all over the world, in Africa, in Asia, Indonesia, or wherever, who literally cannot access Tesla stock. Like they can't buy it. There's nowhere to do that. So on-chain is kind of expanding the market size for the possible investors there. I think the second part is assets where putting them on chain as collateral would make them more productive, because once they're using DeFi, they can access these lending markets. They can access kind of everything that's happening around DeFi. There's a whole category of stuff where like doesn't really make that much sense to tokenize. Like people are going to try and they're going to, like art is, to me, to be honest with you, I think that's an example where it probably doesn't make so much sense, because you have a lot of times you have a single owner, single buyer. Like having that as an asset on chain isn't making it more productive, and it's not making it more accessible. The fractional thing makes a lot more sense, but yeah, I think there's some nuance here that people should appreciate when they're considering tokenization. Not everything makes sense, frankly.
I think too, it's an interesting point where it's like, I think that this is kind of the risk of. I've seen a shift in kind of narratives as far as like the past year or two, where like almost everybody I interview, like even extremely conservative people historically, have basically come out and said, yeah, everything's going to be tokenized at some point. But I think you do bring up an interesting point that I don't think maybe we talk about enough, which is like, it's not just that it can be done. It's like, why would you do it in the first place? Number one, and then who's going to participate in it? And there's all sorts of things that have to tie into that too, that we're probably not even going to have time for today, like digital identity and all sorts of other aspects that have to really be nailed out before this happens. I think one thing that's interesting that you also bring up, and that I think Solana did really well, and you and I were talking about this before this interview, was kind of at the creator level. I mean, you guys have absolutely nailed it from the community economies that have kind of developed out of Solana. And I think it's like impressive no matter what ecosystem or what tribe you come from. If you like Solana, if you don't like Solana and you're out there in the wild, I think it's hard to argue with the success that you guys have had from the creator standpoint. Can you talk a little bit about what that journey has been like, and where you kind of see creator economies kind of going moving forward?
Yeah, I was also, I'm not just a talking head on for Solana. I also built one of the leading creator companies in all of crypto, which is called Drip, and we sold that to Jupiter Exchange in May. So I've spent a lot of time working on this side. It started with NFTs, obviously, and that kind of evolved to tokens. You know, the fact is that most creators struggle to make a living. They get eaten alive until they have significant distribution. Even folks with significant distribution, like some of the top streamers in the world, if you talk to them personally, they'll tell you that they struggle to make money. And I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of tie this back to the fact that we don't have native content monetization that really works. We've tried Patreon, we've tried subscription models, we've tried pay-per-view, pay-per-content. Like, I think I think there's a theory that maybe crypto has a solve for this. My personal opinion is we still haven't nailed it. I think creator tokens are very interesting. You had Iggy Azalea's mother token last year went to like 200 million or something like that market cap, right? You had many celebrities who launched tokens that went to zero within like days. What's cool is crypto is very much like self-correcting. Like it doesn't necessarily make this. It might make similar errors, but it doesn't make this, like the user base doesn't make the same errors exactly each time. So over since last year on this side, like Pump.fun, for example, the model has evolved from creators owning the token that they are launching that represents their work and themselves to and like selling it on top of their audience to make money, to earning from the trading volume on their token. So Pump funds like creator rewards. I think in the last, you kind of they had like a pretty big moment for a bit in last quarter, but I think they've paid out like tens of millions of dollars to streamers from these rewards. And it's brought some like pretty big folks to the table. Like I think Neon, who's maybe the third biggest streamer in the world, just launched a token on Solana and doesn't own any of the supply. It's kind of running the same like trading volume idea. It's like, it's still fast evolving. I'm not convinced yet that we've like found the thing that everyone's going to want to use. But what's cool is we are tapping into an audience that I wasn't really here many years ago. Like they are actively interested and willing to try new things as long as they feel kind of safe.
Yeah. No, I think it is interesting where, I would expect, there's a couple of areas where I still feel like there's so much any area in the world, because like I've said this before, I believe blockchain and DLT at some point in time are just kind of under the hood with most things that we do. It's just a matter of kind of time. And I don't even think we're close to there yet. But I think from like the social media standpoint and then gaming, I don't want to get too much into gaming, but from the social media standpoint, it's like, it seems like the perfect fit. But it almost seemed like every time there was like a social media platform, it's like, hey, you have to go here and then do this and then do that and then create this. And now you can participate. Now you can post. And it's like, but I'm already posting on like X.
Yeah.
And also, you know what I mean? So I think it'll be interesting to watch. I think one area that we actually have had a lot of meaningful adoption is kind of the prediction markets. It seems like it is like just absolutely taken off.
Exploding. Yeah.
You also mentioned, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but Futarchy and ownership. Did I pronounce that? Futarchy. I definitely mispronounced. I knew I was going to butcher it. Okay. And ownership coins. Maybe dive a little bit into why some of these areas kind of matter for adoption and from Solana in the wider space.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned both prediction markets and those in the same sentence, because in fact they were both invented by the same person. I think Robin Hanson. Basically, I think what's happening is we're finding out pretty quickly that we can use markets for a lot of things other than just trading. And so prediction markets are kind of markets for the truth in a way. And Futarchy are prediction markets for decisions. And everyone knows about prediction markets. I can explain it if you want, or we can I don't know how interesting it is.
Maybe just broadly, because I mean, I think that there's probably always at least one person that doesn't know, and if we touch that one person and can inform them, great.
Yeah. So basically, prediction markets run on something called like an events contract, and is either it's a market that people can trade, say a yes or a no on a question, and it always resolves in a binary way. So it either resolves to yes or no. The question could be, will Mamdani become the New York City mayor? And that was like a very popular one recently. And people can buy the yes or buy the no and make money if they're right. I mean, these are going mega mainstream. Like I just saw yesterday, the MBS, the king of Saudi Arabia, was meeting with Trump. And did you see this clip?
I did not see this clip. No, I you know, but it almost seems like, you know, even a couple weeks ago, I think the NFL and Polymarket was like a huge announcement. Yes. It's just like, it's hard to keep up with. It's so much.
So there was a prediction market asking the question, would MBS wear a suit to meet Donald Trump? He hasn't worn a suit in like 10 years, something like that. And he mentioned it on camera in front of Trump. He was like, oh, people thought, you know, I could have made a lot of money if I'd worn a suit. People were betting on, betting on whether I would do that. Sorry, maybe another day. I mean, the point is like, this is entering the super mainstream. And this is like probably the first, in my opinion, this is like the first crypto primitive that is reaching this level of adoption. Polymarket, built on Polygon, but has deposit options in a wide range of tokens, including Solana. Solana even has native integrations. There's an app called Fireplace where you can participate in Polymarket natively with Sol. And then Kalshi is the second one. Kalshi has a huge wedge on sports. Kalshi is also on has deposit options from a number of crypto apps, including Solana. But Kalshi uniquely you can trade Kalshi markets from Jupiter Exchange, which is our biggest DEX, which is really cool. So there's a lot of these are crypto native ideas in a way, and they're kind of merging with crypto and a whole bunch of edges. Cool. So Futarchy is really unique to Solana. So again, the same person invented prediction markets, I believe he's an economist, so he's not a founder. He just wrote about these theories like decades ago, and then people are discovering them and then implementing them in crypto. It's really cool. Futarchy is a way for companies to make decisions with markets. So they set up a market that says, should we spend $1 million this next quarter on customer acquisition or whatever question they have? A market gets formed, and usually in a company, there's governance, right? You have a board who approves decisions on behalf of the operators of the business. In Futarchy, the token holders make that decision with the market, and they basically vote on what the future price of the token will be after that decision is made. So if the price, you know, you can, and it's open to anyone, even if you're not a holder, you can kind of vote on what these companies are doing. What's happened in the last couple of months is this thing has exploded, and they've continuously bringing companies to market who are raising absurd amounts of money, and also the tokens are doing very well. And you know, just yesterday, a company unironically called Solomon wrapped up their ICO on MetaDAO. You can go look at that. That's hilarious, actually. And they just did another. I mean, and this, you know how the economy is right now, like on crypto. They had $100 million like oversubscribed raise on MetaDAO on Solana. And they're kind of like a neobanking product. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think people don't see, I think you hear a lot of stuff about Solana, but people don't, unless you're in the community, some of these really novel products are just not out there, right? And you know, so they call these ownership coins, right? These are tokens that give you you know, that kind of like let you participate in the MetaDAO model in a way. And yeah, Solo is their token.
Yeah.
Could have been you. Yeah.
Hey, $8 million. I wouldn't mind $8 million. I think it is interesting. One of the things that I think from an onlooker standpoint, in crypto being here for a handful of years or longer, it's like, I think a lot of people like retail wise kind of look at like enterprise and institutional adoption. They're like, why aren't we further along? Why aren't these enterprises so interested in blockchain? At the end of the day, it's like they have to have, at least in my thought process, because of having the opportunity to interview some of these, they have to have a really streamlined way to like enact change within their organization first and foremost. So the user experience has to just be absolutely stupid simple. But then they all actually have to like solve problems too. So like that's an interesting use case to me, is like actually having something like a prediction market, leading towards like streamlined business operations, business decisions. Like I also think that things like agentic AI and stuff are going to really make that process a lot better for some of these organizations. But interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, I always like the idea the future is here, it's not evenly distributed. I also tend to think that the thing is we're getting both. We are getting enterprise adoption. Like anyone who says otherwise is not paying attention. There's it's like every day there you see neobanks, TradFi companies, the biggest funds in the world are like announcing huge things in crypto.
Sure.
So that is happening. I also think it's true that like crypto is going to replace all these institutions one day. So as much as Blockbuster wanted to adopt to streaming, it's sometimes faster to be Netflix and build something from the ground up that's designed for this, for the internet. And that's kind of what's happening. I think if you are willing to go and do the work and look, you can see, hey, there's actually the future of banks, the future of fundraising, the future of venture equity. Like these are emerging at this like early level. And I think these are going to be like huge institutions in 10 or 20 years. But they just, you gotta like have a little bit of vision.
For sure. I mean, I have mentioned it a couple of times. I'll do videos and I'm like, the stuff that people literally a handful of years ago when I was like a crazy YouTuber, even before Genfinity, and I was like, they're doing this and they're integrating that. And now like it was pure speculation in 2019, 2020 saying that stuff, but like literally all of that stuff is happening. So now I'm like, okay, well, what's happening next?
Yes.
And it is, I mean, you can even look, for those of us, and I won't be on my soapbox too long here, but like deep diving into some of the banking stuff a handful of years ago, it was like this very cautious like thought process around crypto. And then you can just slowly start to see that narrative changing. And now the big thing is obviously stable coins, which I'll ask you maybe about stable coins briefly. But I think you and I were even talking about like, look, that's just one iteration that's now hypey. And it's like, I'm already starting to see documentation around like tokenized bank deposits and things like that, which is like, is that the next thing, that we kind of see? But what's your just thoughts in general? Because I mean, you mentioned regulations earlier, the Genius Act obviously being one that kind of gets us further across the line in the US. Are we going to start seeing like stable coins to the extent of like, is my local library going to like give me a stable coin when I go to check out a book? Like, are we going to go to that level of crazy?
I think probably at some point, but like, yeah, like the dollar is getting tokenized. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, you can just look at, it's just the most beautiful graph, right? The stable coin, you can go to rwa.xyz and look at the, or Artemis and see the stable coin adoption chart. It's been like continuous run of basically taking the US dollar, turning it into something digital. I don't really see that stopping. I think, aside from prediction markets on the institutional side, stablecoins have tremendous product market fit. Look at this graph. This is just, it's unbelievable. $300 billion of stablecoins.
By the way, is absolutely crazy. If you go back just a couple of years and even like including RWAs and stablecoins, like it was like $200 million just like 4 years ago, which is like wild. And now it's like 40 billion or whatever it is right now. I don't know.
Yeah. So no, it's fine. Like, I think pretty much every bank's going to issue their own stablecoin. I think that's pretty much a given. I think most neobanks will also have their own stablecoin. Why? Like someone, you've seen a sentiment maybe out there that like, why does everyone need their own stablecoin? Well, I mean, it's kind of similar to like, why does Wells Fargo want to lend out their own like their own deposits, right? Like they want to own the thing that is creating value for them. If they use Circle, USDC, or one of these things, they don't get to capture all the yield from the activity on it. So I think, the product challenge is, okay, well, why should I hold USD whatever instead of, USDC or so on? I think that will get over time kind of solved by the wallet layer and by how the banks present this stuff. The future is definitely, you saw Revolut, I think a couple weeks ago, announce that now their USD and USDC and USDT deposits are all one single pool. So you can always exchange one-to-one for free. And Revolut's one of the largest banks in the world. It's number one neobank in Europe. And so this
SoFi,
is like,
just SoFi a couple of weeks. What was that, like last week? SoFi with being able to hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of crazy that you can, if you're a SoFi customer, you don't have to go to Coinbase to buy a crypto asset. You can go directly from your checking account, not have to go through a duplicate KYC process, all that kind of rigmarole, and buy directly. Like that's, and I think they're like, they're kind of like in between a neobank and a trad bank in a way. Again, the future is here. You can see what's happening. You just like, this is going to happen. Like you're going to be able to do that in Wells Fargo. You're going to be able to do that in JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan just announced a stablecoin on deposit token on Base. If you understand how these institutions think, what they're excited about, you'll understand what the world's going to look like in 2 or 3 years. I think stablecoins are like easily headed to trillions of dollars of supply. It's just a better dollar. It's just superior.
Yeah. I want to try to get us through here, and I hope we don't run at time, because I know I promised you we won't run over 40 minutes, and we're already at 27. So
sorry,
we might have to do a follow-up. No, I honestly, there's a lot to talk about. I think that there's also so much of an evolution, like as far as you mentioned, and I guess it's kind of in broad alignment with this, that crypto users and crypto as a whole doesn't normally make the same mistake exactly the same way twice. So in that vein, we always do see new digital assets as well, and new opportunities and new innovation. And you kind of have this, you talked a little bit, or mentioned it at least, like kind of store of value coins. And or can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that, how that's represented, and where you think that's going?
Yeah. There's a very interesting app that emerged in the last couple of weeks called Or Supply. They actually debuted maybe a year and a half ago, and when they debuted, there was so much activity on their product that other apps around Solana got hard to use, and we had to roll out some changes to the Solana protocol to make this better. So the original idea was they actually built proof of work on chain, so you could run a mining app from a web app on your phone and mine this token. And they ended up kind of pivoting into this very unique system where every minute there are 25 blocks, and you basically place a deposit on, you can place a deposit on all of them, or you can pick out ones, and you can see exactly like how much volume is on each one of these things. And every minute, one of those blocks kind of wins the mother load. It wins like the supply of the underlying OR token. And all the funds from the blocks that weren't mined go back to buying back the token. And so it's 100% like protocol revenue share kind of product. It has a really enthusiastic community. I think store of value is, like it's a very interesting way to like present what they're doing. But there's a lot of articles out there you can read about it. I don't want to make predictions about the token itself. It's not like, sure. It could go up, it could go down. Nobody really knows, but they grew revenues in the last 2 or 3 weeks to over $1 million a day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like to be honest with you, only on Solana have we seen multiple products reach that kind of milestone in the last year. These are, to put this in context, or Axiom and Pump.fun, the three things on Solana that have reached that milestone. These are the three fastest growing companies of all time in any industry. So
why do you think that? Why do you think that? Because I mean, it's like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, and like I'm asking purely because I don't know. Like in this, I should preface this, like this podcast, this whole thing is not sponsored by Solana or anything. Vibhu and I just was like, let's do this. Why do you think that is though? And you know, the amount of success that some of the startups have had on Solana is just like crazy as far as like a revenue standpoint.
I think it's just it's the talent that lives in our ecosystem at the end of the day. I think I hesitant to like put a party line out there, but like Solana has always attracted builders who want to build a great user experience. Like a lot of the way that Solana came to be was, as compared to Ethereum and MetaMask, using Solana in 2021 to buy NFTs or whatever else was going on at the time was just so much easier and so much cheaper. And I think that kind of attracted a lot of builders who, I mean, Ore is a beautiful product just for what it is. Like, and so I think we attract these practical builders. And then within Solana itself, you have, I would say, like the largest pool of more mercenary capital. Like it isn't, like Ethereum and some of the legacy chains are very focused on TVL, where, capital honestly kind of sits there idle. It's kind of hard to move. Maybe you pay a big fee if you move it around. So it has a different dynamic. When assets show up on Solana, they move, they trade, they pick up a lot of velocity. And so attention can kind of aggregate around protocols very, very fast in a way that's really not possible on Ethereum. And then if you kind of look past Ethereum, there's no blockchain that has the kind of activity and the kind of liquidity that Solana has today. So it's really like it's the only chain where this is really possible for that reason, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I'm not shilling it. You can go look at the metrics. This is not subjective. Yeah.
So I want to ask, because you also talk about some additional kind of real world systems. Obviously we could get into, I think blockchain and crypto loves terms. You get into Internet of Things and DePIN. So for those that aren't aware, DePIN is decentralized physical infrastructure networks, but just think smart devices and maybe, you kind of understand what DePIN is. And DeSci, so decentralized science. We actually did.
DePIN is one of the easiest things to explain to someone that's not in crypto. The term itself is not, but yeah.
We just did it. So DeSci is fascinating, by the way. So and we could just be real brief, and I'll mention that anybody that's watching this, go check out this DeSci one. We had Novo Nordisk, so one of the biggest kind of pharmaceutical providers out of Europe, on a panel, which some of these traditional entities just do not hop into panels like that. So that was a really good interview. But there's so much opportunity from a research standpoint, from a medical standpoint, and all the things that we kind of see globally for blockchain and distributed ledger to like really change. And I think DePIN, I mean, at the end of the day, most people think of how many billions of people have a phone but aren't connected to the a financial system, or don't have access. So what are your just broad thoughts on, DePIN and DeSci from the Solana standpoint, and or just broadly? Because these are, I should preface, these are very non-sexy things to most people in crypto, but I think that they're like some of the most interesting things to actually look at, because I think they're going to change the way that we literally live our lives.
Well, and they already are. I think the reason they don't get as much attention on the crypto side is the tokens haven't done that well. But you do have like you have a lot of real growth and traction in this category. I'm only familiar with the Solana stuff. Again, I try to be objective. I do work at the foundation, so obviously like have a bias, but I'm not. I would talk about the stuff if I knew about it. So I would say, like, I would start with Helium, which is like consider our like biggest DePIN project. These guys have been around for a long time. They used to be their own blockchain. I think they've been around for probably 9 or 10 years at this point. And basically the premise is you install one of their Wi-Fi hotspots in your home or in your business, and then you can rent it out to anyone that's nearby, and you get paid in there. You get so users pay for access to your Wi-Fi, and we have a similar one called D-Charge, which is doing this with chargers. So if you if you have an electric car, you can open up your garage. I would say these are like the evolution of like the Uber, Airbnb type model, right? They're taking a piece of infrastructure and then allowing anyone to rent that in different ways. We have this with satellites now. So and telescopes, there's an incredible company that's created by one of like the leading like astronomers in the entire world on Solana, and you have these robotic telescopes that you can put on your, wherever you live, and using software, they can all train they can all train at a certain part of the sky, take pictures, and send that back to research labs. So you can get like a visibility on an object or some astronomical events, and get paid for that. So you put a telescope on a roof, it kind of like does its own thing, takes pictures, and then sends that to research labs who pay for that data. I mean, this is really cool stuff. I think it's
Yeah, it's like the move from ride sharing to like resource sharing in a way, which I think is really interesting because like at the end of the day, like think about all the untapped resources that all of us like use. Like I was actually doing, I forget who it was with, and we'll ramp down here in a second. I got like maybe 2 more questions because I want to be cognizant of your time.
Yeah.
I forget who I was doing the interview with, but it was even like talking about like, okay, so like think about, the grid and the electricity that you use. And if you have extra energy, it kind of just goes back into the, and the powers that be, and then they do whatever nefarious things they do with your with your leftover energy. Like at the end of the day, like I believe at some point in the future we get put into that value loop. Just like I think that we talk about RWAs and tokenized assets all the time. I'm like, our data is something that is going to become a very tangible real world asset in the future for ourselves. We're going to be put in that value loop.
I mean, energy companies like some of us, I don't know, like if you're part of an energy co-op, or a water co-op, or like these are basically DePIN entities without crypto mechanics. And I think maybe in the future we'll be paying for electricity by the day with crypto, right? There's I think a lot of room here.
100%. So I'm going to ask you. We're going to kind of ramp down here. I think let me ask you briefly, because I think what we're talking about here is kind of the financial internet. Like I try to describe it to people, and it's such like an obtuse way of describing it. But I'm like, think about what the internet did for information and what blockchain and DLT are going to do for value in a way. But it's like not even really the best way of describing it to people, I guess. But what are your thoughts, just broadly?
I like that.
Broadly about like the financial internet, what we're about to kind of, and it seems to be a slow but also very quick transition, if that makes any sense. Like it's all happening at once, but it's also going very slow.
Yeah. So money's been around for about 7,000 years. We've had property rights and ownership since the Code of Hammurabi or whatever. I don't know how you say that. I've only read it for like 3,000 or 4,000 years now. We've had capital markets since the Dutch East Indies Company went public in like the early 1600s. It's been 400 years of capital markets. Like a lot of people, I think, expect these like change to happen in like days around this stuff, but these are fundamental ideas that are wired into our like genetics at this point, like how capital works, how capitalism works, and are kind of part of that. And it isn't going to be an easy process to like rewire the entire way that we use and think about money. It's going to take a long time, but it's happening now. And I think Bitcoin really opens the doors here to the idea that money can be non-state issued. It can be something anyone can participate in. And we're still at the very, very beginning of all the cascading impact of that. I like the analogy of the financial internet. The way I think about it is every category that the internet has touched has basically produced these like multi-trillion-dollar or tens of trillion-dollar industries. When the internet touched shopping, we got Amazon. When the internet touched entertainment, we got Netflix and YouTube. When the internet touched information, we got Google. When the internet touches financial assets, you get Solana, you get Ethereum, you get some of the other chains out there. I personally I think the reason why is the internet had this effect. It's the internet is essentially this like organism that we've created and designed that connects all of us instantaneously. I mean, I was thinking today, like I was worried that I was like anxious that you were going to ask me questions about companies on Solana, and I wasn't going to remember what they were. And I was thinking like, well, I've kind of like, anyone who's grown up with the internet, like we don't even have a memory anymore. We store that online, like, and we know how to access it. If you asked me to find like the top 25 prediction markets on Solana, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I know where to find it. And I think, and so like, it is like we have created this incredible global brain, and we're finally plugging in finance into it. And this is the most important thing that we can, I think is way more important than AI. And the reason is that capital underlies the entire power structure and of humanity. Like it is money and power are together. And when the money changes, the power changes. When the power changes, everything else, the way that we live changes. I think AI is incremental in some ways to search and some of the other great innovations. Crypto is a revolution, and like, man, we're 15 years in, but in the scope of 7,000 years of money, it's nothing.
Sure. I think it's interesting too. I mean, and I'll last question here in a second, but as we, for those of us that have been here for a while, I mean, there's proof of concepts going on with the traditional system that like we are just starting to see, like, I don't want to say go live, but like I would say like operationalize in a way, but like some of these things last like 5 or 6 or 7 years for like proof of concepts, because I don't even want to say disrupt. You don't value add a traditional system like banking without like building up a lot of trust first. And the only way to do that is by putting the work in. I think the other thing that what you said reminded me of is I did an interview with somebody, and I forget, but he mentioned like when the internet kind of first started and the .com bubble stuff was going on, Pizza Hut of all kind of companies was the first kind of entity out there to develop an email list. And all the competitors were like making fun of Pizza Hut until Pizza Hut had like 30,000 email lists sign up or whatever the number was. And they attached a bank account to what they were doing. And then everybody was trying to play catch up. So like for me, it's very interesting where we're at right now with kind of this financial internet discussion, where it almost seems like it's just very small things that could really just shake up everything. So Vibhu, I want to ask you guys, we kind of ramp down here. Big picture wise, Solana, what are you most excited about? I know that you guys have the conference coming up, biggest milestones this year, just some forward looking statements. And we could probably have done this interview much longer, but I definitely want to be cognizant of the time. But what's coming up? What are the biggest milestones, and what are you looking forward to next?
Yeah, so Solana Breakpoint is happening December 11th, 13th in Abu Dhabi this year. We have thousands of people descend from the ecosystem, from the institutional investors in one place. This year, we have more than 80 announcements coming from teams from across crypto about what they're building on Solana. So I think you should expect a lot of news, like an ungodly amount of news out of this event here. And from a focus standpoint, when is this going to be published? By the way, I should probably.
Well, we can decide. I mean, it can go out today. It can go out tomorrow. It can go out next week.
Yeah. All right. So Monday next week, we're doing something brand new. We haven't teased it yet. We're going to start teasing it tomorrow. There's something huge coming to Solana, and we'll be really excited to share that. I think on Sunday we're going to preview it, and then Monday next week, which is the 24th of November. But next year, a focus for us is, one, making every asset in the world tradable on Solana, and two, we're really going back to the basics. We like this idea of universal basic ownership, which is everyone in the world should have the right to own the things that they use and the things that they love, and they should be able to do that from their phone without any barriers. And so you'll see Solana really expanding the app layer, and really digging into some of the things that we talked about today. Some of these are going to turn into multi-billion-dollar enterprises, and so it's all happening on Solana.
Well, I definitely want to mention to the Solana community, go check genfinity.io out. We do have as much Solana content as we can put on there, but we are probably a little bit behind with some of the more recent announcements. It's hard to keep up with. And that interview, this interview, will also kind of be right here. And then give us a follow on X at Genfinity. And for our audience, make sure
we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this. More Solana content.
Yeah.
On Genfinity 2026.
We're going to definitely give Vibhu a follow at VIBHU HU on X. Obviously, Solana Foundation and all the Solana accounts. And for those interested, definitely check out Breakpoint as well. Vibhu, thanks again for taking the time to walk through these ideas today in such an accessible way. I do feel like conversations like this in crypto help to demystify where digital economies are heading, break down some of the echo chambers and silos that naturally form in this space. And to everybody watching, thank you and really appreciate it. Hang out with me here for a second to make sure I get this recording.
Thank you.